Evening. You can't see, but off camera. Welcome to another Sunday evening rant. It's not morning, because this morning I was on an aeroplane coming back from my hollybobs, so I'm in a really good mood. I'm in an extremely good mood because, having waved my fingers around, I turned up this morning and there were two, figuratively speaking, packages on my front doorstep. They weren't actually on my front doorstep, but you sort of get what I mean. And those two packages contained the two A110's that I said I was buying. That I'd actually found. I've been looking for these for ages, and two turn up. It's a bit like the number 73 bus for those of you who watch this channel and live in London. It's the same we have in the UK, which is, you know, you stand there and wait for ages and then two come along or three come along at the same time. That was my experience of the 207 and the number 73. That probably gives some people indication of where I grew up. Anyway, less of that. So this is the A110. Okay, what is the A110? I hear you ask. No, all right, fair enough. In essence, it is a way of monitoring MIDI that is being transmitted in a MIDI setup or in a MIDI rig. So I'm going to start at the back and then come to the front. So at the back, what we have is we have a single MIDI in and 5 MIDI throws. So yes, what you can do with this is, if you were running a rig or you were gigging or something like that, you can actually have your master keyboard throw the MIDI into this and then operate 5 slave units from the back of this as a throw. It probably would be quite an expensive throw unit, but it would work that way. However, where these units are worth their weight in gold is on the front. Because along the front, what we have is we have a full 88 key keyboard. And on this side here is a channel selector, which tells you what program or channel you've got. And then over here, you've got a twiddly knob that allows you to select the channel. Relatively simple, but incredibly useful when you're trying to work out what is going on with your MIDI setup. I have spent ages scratching my head trying to work out what's going on with MIDI setups in the past. So what this does is, nice and easily, you press a key on the keyboard. If you've got the thing set to the right channel over here, that key will light up in the display there. You know what key you're pressing. Simple. Extremely simple. Extremely invaluable. So I'm going to put this one down because the second of the two units is sitting here. Here's one I set up earlier. And I haven't really had much chance to play with this. Okay, because as I said, came in from Hollybob's this morning. I've had a sleep. They've been taken out of their cardboard boxes. They've been unpacked. They've been sort of looked at a bit, and then they've been plugged in. And then I sat down and decided to talk to you guys. So not a lot of chance to play with these. Anyway, if you can see this, so what we're looking at is we're looking at this little screen here, and what you should see, it probably won't come up, you'll be able to tell what keys I'm pressing, but you should see some red dots appear if I press some keys on keyboard. Look. So there you go, there's some red dots. Okay. Very, very simple. And if you want to monitor another MIDI channel, you just turn the turner to the relevant MIDI channel, and then you press MIDI channel 1, MIDI channel 2. Now this is transmitted, my T1 is transmitting on MIDI channel 1, so it shouldn't actually show anything on MIDI channel 2, which is correct because it doesn't. So there you go. That is a very basic overview of the A110. I will do a more in-depth feature on the A110 shortly, but not today, because I haven't had a chance, and obviously I'm getting a bit hungry actually, so it's probably time to have something to eat once I've finished doing this. Anyway, the next thing that was on the doorstep this morning is the original T-RAM series WorkDisk. And I think, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I think Korg did I don't know, so there's 5 of these. I think they did 3 series of sort of factory standard discs, like they did with the cards on the M1. By the way, the T1 can read all the cards on the M1. But they also did these WorkDisks, effectively, which are these things. And I haven't really had a chance to play with these, apart from make sure they work in the disk drive, to be honest. But these came up for sale while I was on holiday. Just happened to sort of like see an email, and I thought, well, you know, as I have this sort of penchant for collecting all this sort of stuff, I would. So I did. There you go. That's exactly what I got. So there's 5 of those: 104, 101, 1 105, and they all work. So I'm going to have fun in the next few days, hopefully working, or just see what's on there and what programs and what sounds come up. I always like doing that. The problem is it takes so long. You sit there in the evening playing the things. Oh well, c'est la vie. And one more thing was on the doorstep. Again, my collectability piece is buying reference books for keyboards that I own. Now, most of you, if you've watched the channel, you remember that earlier in the year I bought a Roland U-20. I did. And I bought that for a friend of mine. Unfortunately, she hasn't come to pick it up yet, so I've been sitting on it for nearly 8 months. But I was quite impressed with the Roland U-20 for a couple of reasons. I quite liked the stock sounds on it. I quite liked the feel of the keyboard on it. So a few, what was it, probably about 2 or 3 months later, another Roland U-20 came up for sale, and you know, me with my penchant for cheeky bids, put a cheeky bid in, and lo and behold, I won it. So I also have a Roland U-20, and technically I actually have 2 Roland U-20s at the moment, although one of them is a friend of mine's, and I know she wants it. She just is in the process of moving house at the moment, so she has nowhere to store it. So, but in my penchant for reference material relating to keyboards I own, I bought that, which is by Alexander Publishing, which was really interesting because while I was away, if you subscribe to the channel and if you see the comments, you'll see there is a chap in the US called Bruce who makes a number of comments about videos, and there's a conversation quite often goes backwards and forwards between myself and himself. And he pointed out to me that Alexander Publishing actually did a number of books of the T-series, of which he has gone and bought them all before I could get there. Thank you, Bruce. However, I have found some of the other Alexander things on some other sites that I tend to frequent in terms of music, and I have managed to acquire a couple of Alexander Publishing. But what's really interesting about this is that Alexander Publishing seem to have made a number of books for the D50, for the D20, for the U20, the M1, the Korg T1, with reference material in them. And what's really interesting about these books is, whereas in the typical owner manual from the time, which was written in a combination of gobbledygook and geek, these are actually written in fairly straightforward plain English. Which is the way I like to read my books, in fairly straightforward plain English, because I tend to find that then the gobbledygook and geek sinks in when I come to use the keyboard. So that was on the doorstep as well. That should be going into my collection of reference material, which is starting to get quite considerable, I might add. Anyway, this was a feature I was going to do last week. And I didn't. And I didn't for two reasons. Number one, the pool looked very inviting at that point in time. Plus the fact where I was actually doing the video last week, a number of people were getting very interested with me filming a video. I don't know why, but they were getting very interested in filming a video and were coming over to actually sit there and watch me film myself talking to you guys. Which is really weird because I do this, I sit and talk to camera and I feel nothing about it. I've got a couple of friends sitting over there currently pulling faces at me, I might add. But, yeah, all right. Very unprofessional, that I might add. But that I don't mind. But when you've got complete strangers sort of standing there sort of watching you, then it becomes a little bit intimidating, I think is probably the word. So I stopped, decided I wouldn't do it. But it also allows me to have printed some photographs out. So rather than just talk the talk, and I can show you the walk as well. Anyway, so the first thing is, so this was on the internet, okay? And I looked at this, whether this was something worth buying and fixing. And the first thing that sort of springs to mind is, if you look at the rack ears at either end of this thing, it's been dropped, okay? No if, buts and maybes, this thing has been dropped, and it's probably been dropped quite hard, okay, because they're slightly bent. And they don't get bent if they're sitting in a rack, they get bent if somebody drops them or somebody hits them with a hammer. So that was the first thing that sort of starts to put me off. Now, with equipment of this sort of age, you can't really sort of get upset about them having what they call rack ears, or you know, what do they call it? They call it ear rash or something like that, don't they? Which is sort of where you see the sort of paint is rubbed off around where it would actually attach to the cage. What it tells me is it's been in a rack, probably been in and out of several racks over its lifetime, and the people who've been using it have not put it into a rack with what most musicians or most studios do, which is sort of with rubber grommets. So typically we put stuff into a rack, or I do anyway, and they have rubber grommets, so you never actually get the sort of cold metal contacting with the actual piece of equipment. So if you've got a new piece of equipment, it keeps it sort of fairly nice and new. Not that I ever actually sell much of my equipment, and I'll come onto that as another piece. So that's the first thing. And if I was to look at this, you know, there are a number of scratches. It looks like actually watermarks on this, to be honest. I'm not quite sure what that is, so that could mean it's been in a flood or it's been in a damp area or something. That normally would put me off, but what definitely would put me off is if you look at the back of this, somebody's been in and done a mod. Okay, it's blatant. They've actually cut the chassis out and put in 4 IC connectors, if you can see that across there. That means they've been inside the unit. I don't know how they've done that, how the wiring's been done, what other things they've affected when they've been in there, because knowing how the D50 internals are laid out, yes, there is a bit of space around that area, so that area has space, but you're not a million miles away from the audio card, which is over here, and actually sort of the main motherboard sits in the center there, and you could have quite easily sort of dropped something on there when you've wired those in. The other thing that sort of worries me is whether it's been done pre or post fuse, because there is a fuse on the board in there. If it's been done pre-fuse, then that means these are all unfused outlets. If it's been done post-fuse, that means somebody's been playing around with the fuse. But that, for me, would not be a cheeky bid. It would not be a bid at all. So, then I come on to another one. Now, this one, I am actually looking for one of these for somebody at the moment. And this one actually comes up as extremely good value for money, or you might think so. It's extremely clean. There's 2 shots of it. It probably doesn't come up really well on here, but when I zoomed in on the internet, you could see the actual thing itself. Very, very clean. And if you look at the back of it, again, very few scratches around the audio jacks and the MIDI jacks, which would seem to indicate it's not been used very much. However, it doesn't come with a book, so there's no user manual with it. Now, you might say, well, that's very few scratches, beautifully clean, why wouldn't I buy that? Well, first thing that always sets the alarm bells ringing is when a vendor on PayPal does not accept, a vendor on eBay does not accept PayPal. I don't know whether people know this, but definitely in the UK, the PayPal contract is a contract that protects the buyer and the seller. In terms of, it protects the buyer because if you buy something off eBay that doesn't match its description, then you're quite entitled to go back to PayPal and ask for your money back. Even if the vendor won't give you a refund on their own, they will have the money taken from their account by PayPal because it's part of the sign-up agreement with PayPal. So it protects the seller from buying something that's incorrectly described or just blatantly doesn't work. The second thing that sort of like starts the alarm bells ringing is the vendor has asked for cash and has asked for cash on pickup. All right, not willing to post it. So if they don't accept PayPal, you're going to have to go and pick it up anyway. But if they want cash on pickup, that starts to ring some bells with me. I don't want to get into the realms of talking about stolen equipment, but you know, to me, if somebody's asking for cash, somebody's asking for pickup only, I start thinking, why do you want cash? Why do you want it as pickup only? Are you looking to, you know, take me somewhere to either bring me in to nick my cash? Could be there's definitely a lure there, which I'm not 100% happy about. Or is it just a complete stitch up, as in the keyboard doesn't work, but you've got to go there, part with your cash? Or is it stolen? It could be stolen. Don't know. I'm not casting aspersions over this particular seller. I'm just saying, you know, I read these things and this is where my head goes. The other thing that is interesting about this is you look for certain phrases, and if there's certain phrases, then you know maybe somebody's picked them up. So this one says, you know, non-gigged environment, non-smoking house. It's got all the right phrases. It's got all the right phrases, which turns me off because I'm not sure why that's not working. But they do say I think the battery needs changing. But even if the battery needed changing, this thing should still start up. So that would be to me a no. Now, here's another one: Roland D50. Okay, front and back. It's got a few scratches on it, a few marks on it. What it does have is it does have the owner's manual in clear view in fairly good condition. Okay. So I'm looking at this thinking, fair enough. This person only wants PayPal, even better. Both buyer and seller protected. The owner of this keyboard is also honest about what he thinks is not working on this keyboard. Okay, and he's written it in such a way that you might believe that what he's saying is actually true. Okay, and again, I cast no dispersions. If this is you, I do apologise. I just randomly picked your picture off the internet. Okay, so I do apologise. I'm casting no dispersions about anybody here. I'm just sort of saying this is what goes through my head. The other thing about the advert for this one is there is actually a reasonable reason for selling. And for all those reasons, looking at this and looking at the other photographs sort of along with it, I would actually go and buy that. In fact, actually that is a really reasonable cost. And if I didn't already have a really good D50 in my studio and a D005 turning up in a few weeks' time, I might be tempted. But not today. So, I've ranted on for long enough. I am hungry. I've got people pulling faces over there. So, at this point, I'm going to say, c'est la vie. Bye-bye for now. And I will see you on the next edition of my rant next week. Bye-bye. If you like the contents of this video, please give it a thumbs up. Apparently it helps the channel and allows other people to find this video a lot quicker. I'm sure by now if you didn't like the contents of this video, you've already given me a thumbs down. If you want to be notified about future videos that are added to the channel, hit the subscribe button that should be appearing about here.